I hid my weekend hookups as spa days. Now my husband's making sure everyone knows the truth. I used to tell myself it wasn't cheating if I came home clean. Almost every Saturday, I'd leave the house with a packed bag and a rehearsed excuse. Spa day, babe. You know how stressed I've been. He'd kiss me on the forehead, remind me to relax, and I'd smile, tight, guilty, and lying through my teeth. It started 6 months ago. It was not out of boredom, and definitely not because he was neglectful or cruel. Honestly, he's one of the softest men I've ever known. That was the problem. I married soft because I thought soft meant safe, reliable, the antidote to chaos. But after 2 years, soft felt suffocating, like I had married into a white room with no windows, perfect on paper, sterile in practice. My cheating life wasn't about some wild impulse. I wasn't out here being reckless for the thrill. Everything I did, I thought it through. I made a plan, I stuck to it. I had rules and I didn't break them. So I'm still shocked that my husband found out. Since he's already painting me all black, there's nothing to hide anymore. I'll just let it all out here. So yeah, it started with the app. I downloaded it late one night when I couldn't sleep. I just scrolled for a bit at first. I didn't bother putting up a real name or even a photo. Just the basics. I wasn't looking for conversation, definitely not looking for a connection. I was only looking for someone who looked good, someone who wanted the same thing, nothing more. I used burner info, new email, fake number. The goal was privacy, not mystery. I didn't want anyone tracing anything back to me. Once I got the hang of it, I got better at filtering. I'd swipe past anyone who seemed too chatty, anyone who asked too many questions or gave off clingy energy. I paid attention to the ones who were clear about what they wanted. Short-term, casual, no complications. Once a match happened, I'd keep it minimal. No back and forth, with no flirting and strictly just details. Like what day, what time. Then I'd book the hotel. Always one under a name that couldn't be traced back to me. I had a few fake IDs just for check-ins. I made the reservation online with prepaid cards. Nothing ever linked to my real name or my real life. Before each meeting, I had a process. I'd choose my clothes based on ease. Not style, not impression, but just what made it easy to leave quickly if needed. I kept an overnight bag in my car with all the basics. Travel-sized toiletries, condoms, wipes, a change of clothes. I parked a few blocks away from the hotel each time. I didn't want my plates on any cameras. I'd check in early and always alone. No one saw us arrive together. I never stayed at the same place twice in a month, sometimes not even twice, period. I'd send the room number through the app. That was it. Once they were in, I locked the phone away. There was no kissing. That was one of the rules, and also no staying the night. Showers after we engage in our intimate activities. There was no cuddling, no talking involved unless it was necessary. I kept my body clean, my emotions cleaner. Most times it lasted under an hour. No one lingered. They knew the deal and I made sure of it. Anyone who stepped out of line, I blocked. I didn't argue, nor did I explain. I'd simply delete and move on. Whenever our session was over, I cleaned up. I would literally strip the sheets, wipe down every surface, shower again, change clothes. We would even leave separately, using different exits if I could. I always took my time, making sure I didn't forget anything. I never left a trace behind. Doing all that stuff felt like erasing the evidence. It was like a symbolic control for me and psychological barrier. It separated me from the act in a way. If I treated it like a cleanup, like I'm resetting a neutral space, I could maintain the idea that this wasn't personal, messy, or intimate. I didn't want to leave any trace, even emotionally. It was part of my routine. And then I disappeared. From their perspective, I was just a profile that unmatched. There was no way to reach me again. No breadcrumb trail. That was important to me. The disappearing part. Because it kept everything controlled. Closed and simple. I didn't talk to anyone about it. Not even my friends or strangers. It was compartmentalized. That's the word for it. A whole part of my life packed up in a corner box that I never opened outside of those few hours. And as strange as it sounds, I was proud of how well I managed it. I treated it like a job almost. Get in, get out, with no distractions and no surprises. But here's the thing. I didn't feel powerful handling things that way. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I wasn't acting out. I just didn't want the mess that came with dating, given the fact that I'm already married. The questions, the expectations, and the disappointments. I wanted a version of intimacy that didn't require investment. and I figured as long as I kept the rules tight, I could pull it off. It was about avoiding chaos, not causing it. This helped me keep things under control and out of the sight of my husband, because I never wanted him to feel hurt. Each encounter was selected based on distance from my real life. There were no overlapping social circles, no mutual friends, and no one who looked like they'd recognize me at a grocery store. Some were traveling through. Some were locals who had the same idea I did, staying anonymous. No one ever asked for my name twice. I kept the tone cool. I was never too friendly. I made sure to set that boundary right away. I didn't pretend to be someone I wasn't, but I also never revealed who I really was. There was no backstory, no small talk about jobs or hobbies. We didn't talk about where we were from or what we liked. That wasn't the point. The point was to keep it quiet and clean. After a while, it became a rhythm. Like a routine, I'd say. It was not exciting, not dramatic, just something I did, like running errands. That sounds cold, but it was what worked for me. No one got attached, and no one got hurt. I kept a log, not names, just dates and hotel aliases, just so I could track how often it was happening. Not to punish myself, but to make sure it didn't become too frequent, so I won't be caught or accidentally slip up without a notice. I had rules around that too. No more than thrice a month. If I started feeling tempted to do it more often, I'd delete the app for a while, clean break, and reset. I wasn't addicted. I wasn't spiraling. At least, that's what I told myself. Because it felt like harm reduction. If I was going to make bad choices, I wanted them to be tidy, private and contained. I didn't drink during. I didn't do drugs. I didn't even let them buy me anything. If someone offered food, I declined. Gifts? No. Rides? Never. It wasn't personal. It was a procedure. I didn't want favors, because favors lead to conversations, and conversations lead to familiarity. And that was the one thing I was trying to avoid at all costs. When I left the hotel, I'd usually walk around for a bit. And not because I felt guilty, but because I needed to switch gears, step out of that world and back into mine. Sometimes I'd grab coffee. Sometimes I'd just sit in my car and scroll on my real phone, play a podcast, drive with the windows down, then I'd go home. That's the part I thought I was good at, making it all invisible, keeping the two lives so far apart they couldn't touch. And for a while they didn't. I executed all of that in that manner to avoid attachment or messy complications. The idea was to keep my double life controlled, separate, and hidden. And I thought I was managing the damage, making bad choices neatly and quietly. Yet somehow my husband was able to catch up with me. That's why I still can't believe everything came to light because I never brought it home. That was the rule I never broke. I cooked dinner like always, cleaned the counters, folded my husband's laundry, laughed at his jokes, even the ones I'd heard 100 times. I kissed him goodnight and smiled the way I was supposed to. I was still the version of me he thought he married, the neat, kind, steady, and predictable. I'd cook something warm, ask him about his day, pretend to care about the small frustrations he vented about. I did all the things I was supposed to do, maybe even more than before. I was never cruel. I never picked fights. I kept our life running smoothly, so he'd have no reason to look too closely. That was part of it, the neatness, the disguise. But there was another version of me he never met, one who stayed quiet during the day and came alive in the in-between hours. That version of me craved heat, chaos, and risk, not because she wanted to hurt anyone, but because she'd been numb for so long that pain or pleasure didn't matter anymore, just as long as it made her feel something. Anything. A flicker of life in a body that had turned mechanical, and then I'd go home and cook up a story about how spa day went. He didn't see it. He didn't feel it. Thinking about it now, I think maybe he did, but ignored it. Because I never stopped doing the work of being his wife. I just started doing something else, too. Sometimes I looked at him while he slept, breathing softly beside me, and wondered how long I could keep it up, how long I could stay split like that, two people in one skin, one smiling at her husband, one disappearing into hotel lobbies with strangers. I didn't want to burn everything down, not really, but deep down there was a part of me that wanted the flames, not to hurt him, not even to free myself, just to feel the heat on my face again, to know I was still alive. That was the truth I couldn't say out loud. So I kissed him goodnight when I'm done staring at him with thoughts swirling in my head and turned off the light. And the other me waited, quiet, patient, already planning her next escape. The weekend before this last one was supposed to be like the others, in and out, a few hours, a story ready for when I got back. The massage oil smelled like lavender, the sauna was too hot, the cucumber water was bland. I'd been telling these lies so long I could practically smell the eucalyptus just thinking about them. I came home that evening feeling heavier than usual. I'd even taken extra care to smell like peppermint oil, just in case he leaned in for a hug. He rarely did anymore, but I didn't want to leave anything to chance. But when I walked into the house, it was quiet, too quiet, no noise at all. His car wasn't in the driveway, his shoes weren't by the door. For a second I stood still, trying to process it. It was Saturday. That man didn't work weekends. He made a point of it, always telling me weekends are sacred, like he was preaching. So where the hell was he? I called him. Once, twice, nothing. Straight to voicemail. I texted him a vague, "Hey, where are you?" even though I hated sounding like I cared too much. Still no response. I ate alone. I kept the lights dim in the kitchen. Something about the darkness made it easier to pretend this wasn't spiraling. I wasn't worried, at least not at first. Maybe he went out with his brother. Maybe he just needed a break, same as I did. But it was almost 11 p.m. before he came home. He didn't sneak in or stumble around like some wasted frat boy. No. He walked in quietly, his eyes a little glassy, shirt unbuttoned halfway like he'd gotten tired of pretending to be formal somewhere. The scent of whiskey hit me immediately, not harsh, but deep, smoky and expensive. He had been drinking, no doubt, but he wasn't drunk, not fully, just softened. I asked him where he went, but he didn't answer. He didn't look angry. He didn't look guilty either. Just blank, like his mind was somewhere else. He walked past me, straight to the bedroom. Shoes off, belt undone, collapsed onto the bed without a word. I followed him, not because I cared that much, but because I couldn't ignore how off it all felt. "Let's not do this weird energy thing tonight," I said. "Let's just be good." Still nothing. He rolled over, back to me, and pulled the sheets up like he was shutting me out on purpose. I stood there for a minute, maybe longer. I wanted to say more, maybe shake him, maybe ask what the hell was wrong with him. But I didn't. I just left him there and went to the guest room. It wasn't like him, not exactly. My husband never drank like that. He hated how alcohol made people look undignified. His word, not mine. Even when we had wine at dinner, he'd stop after one glass, sometimes two. Whatever had pushed him to that kind of night, it wasn't usual. It wasn't him. The next morning, he was up before me, making coffee like nothing had happened. The house smelled like dark roast and quiet tension. I asked him again where he went last night. I was leaning against the counter like I was owed the truth, even though we both knew we hadn't been honest with each other in months. He took a sip, eyes on the mug, and said, "Some of the guys from work were grabbing drinks. I went." That was all. I waited for more details, but there was nothing more. Then I reminded him that he doesn't even like them. He looked at me then. "Yeah, well, sometimes you end up with people you don't like. Doesn't stop things from happening." I didn't like that answer, but I also didn't want to dig deeper. I asked if he was okay, casually, like someone checking a coworker's mood, not a husband's. He said he was fine and that he was just tired, that they went too far with the drinks, and that's all. Then he laughed a little, dry and shallow. Then he added that our loud neighbor showed up with a bottle of scotch, strong stuff. That was what tipped the night. I nodded, pretending that made everything make sense, but I knew it didn't. Something was off. He wasn't mad, and he wasn't sad either. He was just vacant, like he'd already walked away emotionally, but his body hadn't caught up yet. I didn't ask anything else. I didn't want to push. I didn't really want to know, if I'm being honest. I figured if he was keeping something from me, that made us even. Whatever weird attitude he had, I could live with it. We went about our day like nothing was wrong. But something was. I felt it in the way he looked through me instead of at me, in how he didn't try to touch me, didn't try to make up for the silence from the night before. And for once, I wasn't interested in fixing it either. It wasn't my business, I told myself. Let him have his weird night. Let him process whatever midlife identity crisis he was brewing up in his own head. I didn't realize then that he already knew everything, that he had gone out not to get drunk, but to make a decision. I didn't know he had been planning a confrontation with me. I didn't know he was already done with me. The next weekend came faster than I wanted it to. I had slipped back into the routine, back at another hotel, with the soft beige walls and the faint scent of jasmine that I pretended was part of the spa experience I always lied about. I had my bag packed lightly, my heart heavy, but numb enough to go through the motions. I was supposed to be meeting someone who didn't ask questions, who didn't want more than a few hours of company, a few stolen moments of distraction. But I didn't know what was about to unfold. I didn't know my husband had been watching me all along. When I arrived, and then the person I was expecting came in, and it turned out to be my husband, my eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He strode in like he had rehearsed this moment for months. He didn't yell or even storm in like I thought he might. Instead, he held a thick folder in his hand, bulging with evidence, screenshots of my texts, the hotel bookings, the timestamps, pictures I didn't even realize I'd left behind on my phone, receipts from the taxi rides to and from the hotels. It wasn't just proof. It was a mirror held up to my face, reflecting back everything I'd been trying so hard to hide. He didn't need to say a word right away. Just looking at him, so composed, the weight of everything crashing down, I felt my knees weaken. I wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go, not from him, not from the truth. He started asking questions, but not the kind I expected. He didn't want to know why I was doing this. No accusatory why that might have let me explain myself or justify the chaos. Instead, he asked how I was doing it, like it was a business. Questions like, how does it work? Do you charge for this? His voice was quiet but heavy, like he was trying to make sense of something foreign. Is it for money, or is it for love? The words hit harder than any fight ever could. The idea that I had reduced my life to some transaction, something cold and clinical, cut through the haze of excuses I had spun for myself. I was supposed to be hiding from loneliness, from boredom, from myself, and now he was asking me to put a price on the brokenness I was trying to escape. I wanted to tell him it wasn't for money. I wanted to say it was for nothing at all, for the flicker of something real, even if it was temporary. But the truth was more complicated than I could explain at that moment, or maybe I was just too ashamed. He didn't push. Instead, he laid it out plainly, the file on the table between us like a final reckoning. He didn't need a fight. He had the evidence. He had the power. It was clear then that I wasn't the only one hiding things. He had spent weeks piecing this together, silently gathering proof, building a case in the quiet hours when I thought he was off living a separate life like I was. I had thought the deception was mine alone, but he had been holding his own silent judgment, waiting for the moment when the truth couldn't be ignored. I sat there numb and shattered, feeling the weight of every lie I had told, every broken promise. And not because I was surprised. I had expected to be caught eventually, but this calm, collected confrontation, it was different. He wasn't furious. He wasn't desperate. He was something else. Like detached, almost tired, like the betrayal wasn't a shock, but an inevitable collapse. He was right. It wasn't an unexpected event that suddenly shattered something perfect. Instead, it was the predictable breaking point of something that was already fragile and destined to fail. He was about to leave the room, so I asked him what he was going to do. I knew that was a very stupid question, but I guess the consequences of my actions and his discovery terrified me. That was when he looked at me and shook his head, and told me that I had disappointed him in every way, even in ways he didn't think was possible. He said I shouldn't speak to him ever again. I couldn't even catch my breath when he said that, like the words were sharp and hit me right in the chest. He just looked at me like I was the lowest person he ever knew and said I was nothing to him anymore and that I should never show my face to him ever again. That was when I dropped to my knees right there in the room because I honestly didn't know what else to do. I felt like the floor had gone out from under me and I was just grasping at anything I could find, but there was nothing. He turned to walk out the door and I couldn't move for a second because I was still kneeling there and my mind was spinning. Then I snapped out of it and I ran after him. I didn't even bother picking up the stuff I had left in the room. I left my shoes and my purse and maybe my jacket too. I didn't care. I just needed him to listen to me. I needed him to stop walking away. I was trying to tell him that I could explain everything, but he wasn't having it. He didn't even look back at me. Then he did something that made my heart drop for real. He pulled out his phone and started recording, like full-on video recording with the camera in my face. And I was just standing there with tears all over my face and no words, because I didn't even understand what was happening. He said if I wanted to talk, then I should do it on camera. He said I should explain everything and confess on video so everyone could see what kind of woman I really was. I begged him to stop. I asked him over and over again to put the phone down and just listen to me. I wanted him to talk to me like a human being, but he didn't. He just stood there holding his phone up and telling me to tell everyone how I sold myself out like a cheap whore and how I ruined my own marriage over something that didn't even matter. He said I should talk about how I threw everything away for meaningless intimacies. I kept saying please and telling him it wasn't like that, but he just kept filming. I reached for the phone, but he pulled back and looked at me like I was disgusting. I couldn't even look at him straight. My whole body was shaking. Then he just walked right past me and went down the hallway. He didn't look back. He didn't say anything else. Just walked away like I wasn't even standing there crying and begging him. I followed him outside because I didn't know what else to do. I just kept thinking if I could get him to listen, or if he would just stop for 1 second and let me talk, maybe I could fix it. Maybe not all of it, but something. But he went straight to his car and got in and slammed the door. I ran up to the window and tapped on it, but he didn't roll it down. He just stared ahead like I wasn't even there. I stood there watching him start the engine, and I was screaming his name and telling him not to leave me like this, but he just drove off. I didn't even think. I ran back to the hotel room and grabbed the rest of my stuff. I didn't care about how messy the place was. Usually I cleaned everything up so nothing would be traced back to me, but not this time. I left the bed all crumpled and some of my things all scattered all over. The main reason I went back was my car keys, and once I had gotten that, I grabbed whatever other thing I could. I threw my stuff into my arms and ran to where I parked my car. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely open the door. I dropped my keys twice, then I got in and slammed the door and started the engine and just drove. I didn't even know which direction he went, but I thought maybe if I just went fast enough I could catch up or spot him somewhere. It was stupid. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was wiping my face with one hand and steering with the other and looking around at every car like maybe it was him. My head was pounding and my stomach felt as though it was performing acrobatics. I kept feeling the urge to vomit, but I didn't. I just wanted him to come back and tell me it could still be okay, or maybe not okay, but not this. I just didn't want it to end like this. Then out of nowhere, I hit something hard. I didn't even see it coming. I swerved too late and slammed right into a metal pole. The sound was like a bomb going off. My body jerked forward and back, and I just sat there dazed. People started gathering, and someone called the police. I didn't move. I was still in the driver's seat, hands on the steering wheel, just lost in guilt. People kept coming to ask if I was okay, but I was too dazed to hear or even answer them. Soon enough, I could hear sirens, but everything felt like it was far away. My head was spinning, and I couldn't even cry anymore. The cops showed up, and I was still in the car, just staring out the windshield. They knocked on the window, and I rolled it down. They asked me if I was hurt, and I said that I wasn't. I told them that I was fine, but shaken. They looked at me like they were suspicious of me, and I knew what they were thinking, so I just stated it to clear the air. I told them I wasn't drunk. I hadn't even had anything to drink since earlier that day, and I wasn't high or anything, I just wasn't paying attention. That's what I said. I wasn't paying attention. They checked everything and ran my name and asked me if I had someone to call, but I didn't. I didn't even know what I was going to do. I kept thinking about him and how I had lost him in the worst way, and how I had wrecked everything. The car was pretty banged up, but no one was hurt, thank God. It could have been worse. Then they arrested me. Careless driving. They said I could have hurt someone, and they weren't wrong. I was being careless. With the car, with my life, with everything. After I got checked by the doctor and answered all their questions at the station, they let me go home. I didn't even want to go back, honestly. Everything about the house felt heavy. It was like every wall had eyes, like they had seen it all and were just staring at me. He was gone. That was the first thing I noticed. His things were still there, but he wasn't. It was quiet, too quiet, and not the peaceful kind. The kind that feels like something is wrong, even when nothing is moving. The kind that makes your chest tight and your skin feel too small. I sat on the couch for a while, not even turning on the lights. I just stared into the dark, like maybe if I stayed still long enough, I'd disappear too. I didn't sleep that night. I kept hoping he'd walk through the door, or that I'd hear his car pull up. I even kept the porch light on just in case, but nothing. I must have dozed off around 3 o'clock in the morning, because the next thing I remember was my phone ringing loud as hell, and it was his sister. I picked up thinking maybe he had asked her to call me or something, but no. That wasn't it. Not even close. She didn't even say hello. She went off on me right away. Her voice was shaking, but not like she was sad. More like she was full of rage and didn't know where to put it. She told me I was disgusting and that I didn't deserve to be breathing. I told her to calm down and talk to me like an adult, but that made her angrier. She said things I never thought she could say to another human being, and definitely not to someone who used to be like a sister to her. I kept asking her what she was talking about, even though I had a feeling I already knew. But I guess I needed to hear her say it just to be sure. She told me everyone knew, and it was not just the cheating part, but all the dirty details, the hotel names, the timestamps, the photos, everything. I hung up. I had to. I wasn't about to sit there and get yelled at like a punching bag. Right after that, my phone lit up with messages. First, it was just one or two. Friends, co-workers, neighbors, even a cousin I don't really talk to. Then it was nonstop. Everyone had something to say. People asking how I could do that to him. Some were shocked, and most just wanted confirmation that it was real. I didn't even know how to answer them. I didn't reply to most. I just stared at the screen and felt like I was going to have a panic attack. Then someone sent me a screenshot. It was a post. He had made a public post on his page, nothing crazy or dramatic, just a few lines. But it said enough. He didn't mention my name, but everyone who knew us knew who he was talking about. He wrote about betrayal and pain, and about how sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. After that, I couldn't even go outside. I felt like every face I passed knew. I felt like I had a label on my forehead that said cheater. I tried to pretend it didn't bother me, but it did. Not because I didn't deserve the judgment, but because it was everywhere. I couldn't hide from it. And what made it worse was that I didn't even really hate him for doing it. I hated that he was smart and calm about it, that he let the truth speak for itself and let people draw their own conclusions. I didn't hear from him, not a single call or text. It was like he had erased me overnight, like I never existed in his world. And that was worse than any argument we ever had. I kept checking his page like a crazy person, watching for updates, but he wasn't posting anything new. He had already said what he needed to say and moved on. Meanwhile, I was stuck. I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't eat. My body felt like it was here, but my mind was somewhere else. Then my mom called. I didn't pick up, of course. I didn't want to hear her voice. I didn't want the disappointment or the lectures. But that didn't stop her. She showed up the next day with my elder brother. I didn't even have time to pretend I wasn't home because they knocked like they were the police officers. My mom came in first and hugged me, but it wasn't the warm kind. It was stiff, like she was doing it because she had to. Then she pulled back and gave me that look. That one moms give when they're about to drag you through the mud with words, but also kind of love you at the same time. My brother wasn't that soft. He sat on the edge of the couch like he didn't want to touch anything and asked me what the hell I was thinking. I didn't even know how to answer him. I just sat there with my hands in my lap and listened while they both went back and forth about how disappointed they were and how they couldn't believe I had done something like this. My mom kept shaking her head like she was in a bad dream and waiting to wake up. They asked me why I did it, and I didn't have a straight answer. I told them I felt trapped and numb and like I didn't know who I was anymore. My brother rolled his eyes and said that was the dumbest excuse he'd ever heard. I wanted to snap back at him, but I didn't. He was right to be mad. They both were. But hearing it out loud like that, from people who had always been on my side, that hit me differently. I told them he wasn't the problem, that it wasn't about him being bad or mean or distant. It was about me, about something broken inside me that I didn't know how to fix. I thought they'd understand, or at least try to understand, but they didn't. My mom said I should have just gotten a divorce if I was that unhappy. My brother said I should have gotten therapy. I didn't say anything. There wasn't much left to say. When they left, the silence came back. But this time it wasn't empty. It was full of all the voices I'd heard and all the texts I'd received. My mom, my brother, his sister, our friends, the comments on the internet, all of it playing in my head like a song on repeat. And I realized I had nothing left to hide behind. No more lies or fake spa stories. Definitely no more pretense. I spent the rest of the night just sitting on the floor of the living room. I looked around at the house and everything looked different. The couch, the lamp, the photos on the wall, all of it felt like it belonged to someone else, like I was a guest in my own life. And I guess in a way I was. I had been living 2 different lives for so long that now that one was gone, I didn't know what to do with the one that was left. That weekend changed everything. I lost more than just my husband. I lost the version of myself that I had convinced everyone was real, the one that smiled at parties and made dinner and asked about his day, the one who told herself she had it all under control. She was gone, and all that was left was me. Just me, sitting in a house that felt like a museum of mistakes. I don't know what comes next. I really don't. Maybe I'll try to rebuild. Maybe I'll move away. Maybe I'll just stay here and try to make peace with what I've done. But one thing I do know is that I can't keep running. Not from myself and not from him. And most definitely not from the truth. The lies are over. Update. Basically, my life is over. My marriage has ended, and everything is out in the open now. Everyone at work knows, and I'm nothing more than a bad person in their eyes. I learned from strangers just how creepy, stupid, and disgusting I was. My ex-husband did a good job painting me as the villain. He could have just walked away, but instead he dragged me down, and it's affected me in the worst ways possible. But there's nothing I can do. The damage is already done. I can't even hope for light in the darkness I dwell in, but I do hope it somehow gets better for me.